I'm going to be going through today's topic on creating opportunities and sales pipelines in CRM. My name is Ryan Pritchard. I'm the VP of Sales and Marketing here at Can-Am Systems. And I'm going to be taking you guys through some of the changes that we're making to the opportunities module, as well as explaining a little bit about how this module works in CRM if you're not familiar with this functionality. Now, just some quick housekeeping items to go over. Today, this session is being done on our Zoom webinar. So again, for any question and answers, I do ask that you put those into the Q&A chat box throughout today's presentation. The session itself will be recorded. So if you had to jump off early or if you started late, you can watch the full recording. We typically post those to our YouTube channel within a day or two of our Lunch and Learn completing. And any content that we've created today, whether it's our notes and PowerPoints or the guides that go along to this, these can be accessed through our online help library, as well as through our online Proven Academy. And any questions that don't get answered during today's session, you're welcome to reach out to us on the support side, either via email or phone, and I'll make sure that these questions get answered in regards to today's topic. Now, getting started, I wanted to go through the importance of definitions in CRM. For some of you who are getting started on the CRM side, there are a number of key definitions that you may not be fully utilizing today in the CRM that are really going to help you with this opportunities module. We are also going to be taking a look at the current opportunities module and some of the feedback that we've got from customers that are using it as a way to really improve and streamline the opportunities and sales activities that we're tracking on the CRM side. I also want to introduce a brand new feature in Proven CRM, which we are calling Wizards. And this is going to allow organizations to be walked through step by step on how to set some of this functionality up inside of the CRM. You know, in the past, it's been very difficult for customers to kind of figure out, what do we need to get started? Or what defaults should be set up in the system to really help me from an overall understanding perspective? So I'm going to be breaking down some of the new changes that we have with Opportunities 2.0 in CRM, ranging from how we handle defining the importance of industry types, being able to categorize our sales stages that will fit your business model and what we're expecting from our sales team, as well as outlining what are the required pieces of information that we need to capture, at these different stages, as well as being able to now visually see that once we set this pipeline up, how can I now monitor this, not only from an individual salesperson perspective, but as a sales team or sales manager who really needs oversight as to what do we got working on in our pipeline today? What are the next steps that we need to move these relationships forward in our system? And how do I visualize this in a way that we can measure and manage that pipeline in the CRM effectively? So what I'd like to kind of get started with is just a couple of different definitions that we have in the system, just so that you may hear these terms mentioned throughout today's presentation, but just to understand where they're coming from. So opportunities are really just projected leads that we have within the CRM. So these leads are targeted relationships. They can be companies or contacts that potentially can refer business to your organization. And each of these different opportunities can be broken down with a series of what we call sales stages within the CRM that allow contractors to understand where this relationship sits within a sales process and sales pipeline. And last but not least, each of these steps and stages that we set up within our pipeline, they may require our team to change our process and what we follow based on the different industries that we're marketing to. So, for example, our strategy for marketing to plumber referrals may be very different than the strategy we use to market to property managers or adjusters, or maybe even other restoration companies. So we have to define these different sectors within our CRM so that we can properly organize the steps that we need to take to go from someone who fits our target market to someone who's referring business to us on a regular frequency. So for those of you who are familiar with how opportunities work today in the CRM system, some of the feedback that we got inside of the CRM talks a little bit about how the definitions that we set up in the system, they're not connected necessarily to how we see them as it pertains to our opportunities. So if I jump into the live system, just for you that may not realize where this functionality exists, when I jump into either an organization or a contact, underneath my activities, you'll see a module in here called opportunities. And some of the feedback that we got from these opportunities that was when I come into an individual opportunity record, in here it's organized all this information for me so I can give this opportunity a name, I can set up sales stages and different types, but none of this is connected logically in the system. So it made it very difficult for companies to kind of train and teach people some of this feedback to say, okay, if you're going to deal with a plumber, for example, you need to follow these stages. And it didn't really allow for a lot of flexibility to create different pipelines. In addition to this, these screens that we set up in the system, as far as visualizing where they sit in this process, it really didn't leave a lot to our imagination. So I could have a number of these lines in the system, but visually, I didn't really know where that relationship stood in my overall pipeline, or even what the next steps were to move this forward. So again, it made it difficult for somebody to know where to go from here as far as progressing that lead. And the third type of feedback that we received in the system was that the information that we gather on these tickets, it left a lot to be desired from a standpoint of, well, what if I need to know how many locations this office has, or maybe how many employees? What size of business is this? There wasn't any flexibility to saying what is required to capture, what additional information do we need in order to properly make sure that we funnel these opportunities through our pipeline, but we're also capturing important details as to what makes this relationship unique and giving us some context as to who we're really dealing with here. So that's some of the feedback that we have, obviously, from our original opportunities module. And so when we took a look at all of this information, one of the first things that we did in the CRM is we said, when you log into your definitions, they were all organized in alphabetical order. So we really had no idea which of these definitions had an impact on opportunities. We didn't know which of these definitions played off of one another. So I didn't know that industry type actually plays a significant role in being able to set up my stages. They were kind of just organized all over the place. And so one of the first things we did with Opportunities 2.0 was we took a look at the definitions and we said, let's logically group these together so that users now had the ability to know that if I'm going to set up opportunities, these are the important fields that make up that module in the system. And we group these into 4 specific sections in the CRM: opportunities, sales activities, relationship definitions, and miscellaneous, which are more of just masking and things in the system that we needed to set up. Things like our job definitions, we got rid of showing in the CRM because those really needed to belong on the job management side and really shouldn't have been edited in the CRM side at all. So this allows a new user coming in to get a better understanding of what are the things that I need to have set up in order for this module to work properly. The next thing that we talked about is how do we guide an individual person step by step through the process of what they need to define in the system, so that our user was essentially, we could hold their hand through setting this process up to go step by step into our different modules in the CRM. And so as an example, if I wanted to come in here and let's just say I want to set up a brand new pipeline or industry in our system. Let's say I want to market to our adjusters. So in here, I'm going to set up a brand new industry type. And in here, I can move this around in any direction that I want in the system, so that when I go into my opportunities, the first thing it's going to say is, okay, you've set up a new industry, but you don't have any stages. You need to go in and set up your stages so that we can start to build our pipeline in the system. So now I can come in here and I can now start to set up my stages for my adjusters. And again, this is defined in the system based on your own stipulations. So let's say our first stage is prospecting. In here, I would come in here and save my stage, and you can see it now starts to build my pipeline steps on the left-hand side. And so maybe after prospecting, maybe I want to do an initial call. And thankfully, if you're as great a speller as I am, there's also a nice spell check feature built in here that'll help us kind of go in and define those steps in the system. So now you can see I can start to flesh out the different stages that we need to go through inside the system. And if I go to the top, you can see that each of my different industry types can have a different sequence of events that we follow in the system. Some of these may be more complex than others, and some of these may be very simplistic. But they allow us to, again, go in here and start to identify those different buckets in the system. Now, in addition to this, you may want to require information to be collected at this point in time. So if I come into my form items, you can see in here, it allows us that at each stage of our job, I can now come in here and require a different information to be added. So you can see I got main contact, number of locations, number of employees. Maybe I want to capture a direct phone number, let's say. And so as I come in here, it allows me now to define the type of field. Input being just free form type, selection being a drop down that I can come in here and define different items, yes or no and true and false being like a checkbox. And then of course I can put in things like our date field in here. So in this process, I'm going to come in here and just make this an input field. Because it's an input field, it allows me now to go in there and determine a mask. So if I want the phone number to be formatted properly, it's going to have that field formatted for me. And then I can determine whether or not I want to make this field required. So from a perspective of, can I get past this step without having this information in the system? And in some cases, you may allow the person to get past that step without it. In other cases, you may want to make that required so that they have to put that information in there in order to bypass that in the system. And so in here, it's now given us the ability to define our industry, create a step-by-step process to define the different stages of what we're going to walk that industry through from prospect to referring client. And within those steps, we can now define required fields that say you can't move from step 1 to step 2 until you have that information in the system. And again, there's no right or wrong answer to this. So you can come in here and define all of those different steps inside of your pipelines, and each one can be unique to the industry that it belongs to. This also gives us the ability in the system as well to come in here and now start to visualize our sales pipeline a lot better. So once we've gone through the steps of setting this up, I'm going to come back into my live system and I'm going to go into our opportunities module. Now you can see in here that from the top of this screen, all of the industries that I've defined are now available for me to switch to get a very quick overview on what do we have sitting within our individual pipeline. In each of these buckets that I've assigned, the opportunities that we create fall within those buckets. So I'll be able to again see per opportunity detailed information as to what we're capturing on this individual record. So in here, if we look at our visual pipeline, those little dots that we have allow us to set up different opportunity labels. And again, these are all self-defined, so you have the ability to come in here and visualize that label. It's a multi-select tool, so it'll allow us to adapt multiple coloring mechanisms to each of our stages. And then each of our opportunities will come with an opportunity name, a relationship that's attached to it, who in our organization is accountable for that relationship, the number of days since that update has happened on that opportunity, and our visual labels. So again, when I go into my pipeline, I can immediately start to pick out things like how many hours or days has it been since we last looked at this opportunity? Who in our organization is accountable for moving this through our pipeline? The value of those relationships, if applicable, and even allow me to come in here and instead of seeing just one individual, allowing us to come in here and organize our pipelines by individual salesperson, which again will allow us to come in here and start to create different visibilities for each person within our team as to what their pipeline looks like versus the rest of the company. These three dots at the top will also allow us to come in here and add brand new opportunities on the fly. And keep in mind that these opportunities will require us to connect to existing relationships within the system. So all of this assumes that when we go to set up this opportunity, that you have the relationship created first. Now, in this case, I'm just going to select one of our relationships in the system. So I'm going to come in here and select our relationship. In this case, we can give our relationship a label. So we can say this is the Zabu chicken deal. I can identify, obviously, I'm the created by. We can put in an expected close date, but essentially this gives us the opportunity to benchmark what our target is. In here, I can now assign our opportunity to one of our existing pipelines. So in this case, I can put in our industry type plumber, which will now go back and update the industry type back on my opportunity and my relationship record. And based on the industry type that I select, I now have the ability to come in here and put in a lead source, a description, an amount, and then I get to assign this to our relationship. Once I've added that in the system, you'll see it now adds directly to my pipeline, and I can now click on this relationship and it expands that pipeline for me to now start to produce an audit trail that shows me what steps I've taken for this particular relationship. And so in here, each of these relationships, I should have the ability to drag and drop into a different bucket. So as I move this relationship from step 1 to step 2, the system says, hold on a second, you can't put that initial call step in until you've captured all of that required information that we've put into the system. So in this case, they'd want to get us a main contact. So we're going to say John Smith. I can then state they're a single location with about 15 employees, and their direct phone number in here I can add, but it's not requiring me to put in that phone number if I tried just to bypass that in the system. So now we can see my opportunity has updated. I now have 2 opportunities in my stage. It updates the number, the value, and I have a grand total sitting here at the top that allows me to come in here and start to monitor this in the system. And even if I wanted to go into our organization record, let's say I jump into my opportunities list and I just go right into our True Plumbing record. Underneath my activities, I now have the ability to come in here and look at the opportunity pipeline for that individual. So in here, if I'm working on multiple opportunities with the same office or different individuals, I still get that visual pipeline perspective that I can now see both individually, but also as an overall scope in the system from our opportunities pipeline. Now, the other thing that is important about this as well is that in here, as I start to update the different stages and required fields, that audit trail is going to update, and you will see them visually move at the top from one end of our pipeline to the next. This also gives me access to all of their notes and communications in the system. So in here, when we set up that initial call, I can come in here and put in that the fact that my call was completed and that we've entered that call into the system. And I can put in my notes in here, completed phone call. Once I hit save and close, it gives me the ability that once I've marked that note in the system, I can actually generate a follow-up task that allows me to now come in here and say, what are the actual next steps that I want to trigger on this individual client? And these next steps can be shown through our reminder system via email or task with some context as to the next step is going to be setting up that on-site visit, where I may be submitting a proposal or providing them some additional information that I can now record here in the system. And so now I have my notes, I have my audit trail where I'm now seeing that I put in my activity, I created my follow-up task. So I'm not losing sight of all of these different touch points that I have in the system that are now being audited by each one of these individual records. And even though I can see it in a visual pipeline perspective, we still have the grid view in the system where I can now snap to our grid, and I can now ask the system to group my grid based on our different sales stages. So in here, if I wanted to see everybody who's in that initial call bucket versus face-to-face meetings versus review proposal, I've now created these visual groupings for us that I can now extract in the system and save through our different export formats, Excel, Word, CSV. And this is giving us the opportunity, again, to be very flexible in nature with how all of this is set up and defined. Now, in regards to the opportunities module, all of the things that we're showcasing today on Opportunities 2.0 will be available in the February release. So if you're going into CRM today and you're like, hold on, I can't see all these great things that Ryan's showing me, they will be updated in the February release for CRM. The Opportunity 1.0 still exists in the CRM and will allow companies to start creating those opportunity records. But all the great things we're talking about today will be released on next month's release. Now, I know we're getting to the end of our Lunch and Learn content for today, so I will turn things over to the Q&A chat box. If you do have any questions in regards to what we covered today, I'm going to answer as many as I can before I let you guys go. I can see there's already one question inside the Q&A chat box. So Ari writes, it would be helpful to have certain templates for the stages set up. I agree. The default templates will be set up in there. The ones that I'm showing in today's demonstration, we'll have those set up as defaults for people just to get started with if they need a helpful understanding of how to configure their initial pipelines. But of course, if you have need of some assistance in getting set up initially, or you want to come and have one of our trainers reach out to kind of get that configured, we can do that as well. Ryan, I see that your hand is raised. Let me go into the attendees and unmute you if you want to ask your question live. Should be unmuted. May give you a prompt on your screen to unmute yourself. You're also welcome to, there you go.
Inadvertently hit the button. Sorry, Ryan.
Yeah. Oh, as far as the ask question?
Yes, sir.
No worries, no worries. So I'll leave this open for another few minutes if anyone has any questions. Katie writes, can you forward the recording of this Lunch and Learn to the attendees today? If you missed the beginning, all of our Lunch and Learns are actually posted on our YouTube channel. If anyone needs help accessing the PSA YouTube channel, I can have our team just send out some information. But it's a great resource online to even see Lunch and Learns that you may have missed in the past. For example, if anyone missed the Lunch and Learn on work orders last week, you can access that on the YouTube channel. Dana writes, if we already have all our organizations set up with addresses, phone numbers, notes, contact person, will this automatically transfer over when we create our pipelines, or do we have to re-enter that? So the only thing that you will need to make sure is set up is that every one of those opportunities has an industry type, that each of those industry types have a pipeline that's defined, and then they'll show up on the grid. The only thing I would say in addition to that question is if you want to start to add additional information besides what we captured on that initial opportunities record, you now have the ability to put in additional requirements. But I have a suspicion that if you haven't set up those two fields as a requirement, industry and sales stage, you will not see those when you first log in to the new opportunities. Anonymous writes, is the opportunities module ready to go now? I don't currently see it on the left-hand side of the CRM. So opportunities 1.0 is available in CRM today. It's actually underneath the sales activities inside the organization record. Opportunities 2.0 will be released in February, and you will see that new opportunities module pop in that February release. As far as the specific date for the release, Sheila, I have to go back with the CRM team, but I believe the target is mid-February, so February the 15th for that release. And if that date changes, I will definitely make sure that everyone is communicated with so they can get excited for that release that's coming out. All right. Well, I don't see any more questions. And that does it for my 30-minute time frame, right on the nose. So if there are additional questions that you didn't get a chance to answer or ask, and you want to email us directly, feel free to send those questions into support. I do want to thank everybody for all their time and attention today, and look forward to getting you guys all set up on the opportunities module so you can start putting together your pipelines in the CRM. Thanks again, guys, for your time. Have a fantastic day, and we'll catch you